All right, cool. Let's get started. So, firstly, give us an intro, who you are, what you do, and how long you have been doing tradie work and working with them specifically, and a bit of a background. How did you get into where you are now?
Well, my name is Matt, and I run an agency called Tradie Web Guys, and we essentially build marketing packages for trade businesses only, actually. So essentially, when a business comes to us, they are a builder or a solar electrical company or a bathroom renovation or something like that, and they're basically looking to generate their own leads into a defined sales and marketing system, which we set up and deploy and help them customize. So it's quite a boutique service. We work with specific businesses within specific verticals. We also do a lot of web development outside of the marketing space for any trade business. But yeah, we're essentially pretty heavily niched into like quality lead generation for trade businesses. My background is plumbing. I used to be a plumber many moons ago. Although I tell all my clients, you probably wouldn't want me working on your home anymore. It's been a while. Or maybe even back then, who would know? But yeah, I ended up in the marketing space after I worked for a company in Sydney many years ago that basically sold a technology to primarily plumbers. And we had a lot of clients that were really good at doing the thing, but really bad at promoting themselves. And so I saw a bit of an opportunity there to help them with some of those marketing. And then one thing led to another, and I was full ball into the agency, and it's been like that for the last 12 years now. So from strength to strength, and now we've got 20 staff, and we're all over the world, and yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And when you started out and made the move, was it just yourself that you just started
Yeah,
with you?
it was myself, but obviously I had to find people that had the skill set that I needed, which at that point in time was development. So I went and partnered with the developer. I didn't partner with the developer. I went and got a developer to do the development side of things. And then gradually over time, everything became in-house, and we just hired our own staff and our own teams. And piece by piece, you kind of learn these things. So yeah.
And I think a key point there is about you weren't enjoying your business and you weren't enjoying being a plumber anymore. You found, you saw that opportunity and then you took that leap.
Well, yeah. So I was hired by a company when I was actually plumbing, and I was hired by a company to set up for this position to set up this company to sell this technology, which was great because I wanted something a little bit different. I like the idea of getting off the tools, but then for anyone that has, you kind of miss it. So you miss like being able to build something, go, look, I did this.
Yeah.
Whereas anyway, so yeah, and I was in that role for a couple of years, and I was just really strongly disliking that. I think just working for someone else, like going from running a business to working for someone, it's not great. So there's a few office politics and stuff going on there, but I just ended up going out on my own, and yeah, which went into the marketing space instead of back into the trade, And it's not because I dislike the trade. It's just because I felt like I wanted to spend more time in the education space and more time on the business side of trade businesses, as opposed to like just being in there digging holes and, replacing blocked drains.
And talking about not liking being off the tools, so many clients I work with, they're like, we want to get off the tools. And I'm like, are you sure that's what you want?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that is what they want, but then sometimes they only want to be off the tools for a little while, or, can still be on the tools a couple of days of the week. So did you find when you went into this space that you were able to feel like you were building things again and that you had
No, not really. I think that was part of the problem. It was very different to what I was used to, and
yeah.
it came with a bit of an adjustment period. But then, after a while, once you do start building things just in a different format, like we, as I was saying, we sort of went into I started going into the education space. I was presenting at TAFE, New South Wales, in their Cert 4 classes talking about marketing and things like that to,
Mm,
you know,
so good.
students that were about to enter into that, into their business, into their own business. And then I ended up talking at the Department of Education roundtable events down in Canberra and these government events. And that sort of led me thinking into like, this is cool. Like it's being well received what I'm saying here, but it's hitting like 20 people in a room. How do we get the message out wider? So, and this was back in 2016. And I thought, well, this is like after maybe four years or something of running the business, the agency. I thought, oh, maybe I'll start a podcast. I've heard a few good things about this podcasting thing. And so that was, back in 2016 and kind of before it was really well known. And it's, now pretty well established with up to 400, close to 400 episodes, maybe 400 by the time this one goes live, who knows?
And I think that's, that's how we first connected, was through your podcast. And I have a lot of clients that I work with who listen to your podcast religiously. So I think, firstly, congratulations on that education piece. I think you're definitely hitting that box there. And again, like we were talking about, that consistency of having an episode out pretty much each and every week is changing the industry.
Yeah, and that's it's a different type of building. Like you sort of, it's just adding value to businesses in a different way and sort of at a bigger scope, which is kind of more, a little bit more rewarding, I suppose, than, looking at a nice bit of stack work you've put up. Different though.
So no chance of going back on the tools anytime soon then?
Look, I think I'm pretty much unemployable.
Yeah.
For the better part, and I've been out of the game for a while now, so I'm not sure how well I'd slot back in.
And interesting that you say about going to work for somebody else and how that wasn't a good fit for you. I always say to my clients, for me, when I come across Profit First, it was a time in my bookkeeping business where I realized it sucked. I hated it. But I had that realization of I couldn't go back to work for somebody else because it wouldn't have been fun. And then I was like, oh, I have to do something here. And that's how I came across Profit First. And I think there's so many people who are self-employed who continue on in their business, even though it's struggling, because they don't want to go work for somebody else, but then they also don't know how to improve it. And I think obviously your podcast does a great job at bringing on so many different and varied guests to be able to showcase the different areas where business owners, particularly in the trade space, can get more information and make those changes. And one of those changes that we obviously want to talk about today is Profit First. So I know that you've been doing Profit First in your business for quite a while. Tell us a bit about when you come across it and how long it's been, roughly.
So I have repeatedly said over and over again on my podcast, I never knew anything about finance, money, or anything. Coming out of a trade, I didn't have good role models in the financial education space. Parents weren't great with money, and I never really had anyone to look up to. So I kind of did everything wrong, and ended up down the path that a lot of the listeners and viewers have probably been down in the space of having ATO debt and all this kind of carry on. Just through poor financial management and through no one's fault but my own, but just being ignorant towards what that actually looked like. And I remember and then having a string of horrendously bad accountants and things along the way that just literally could not communicate anything from layman to a layman, And it was crippling and daunting. And anyway, I finally, I suppose, got to the point where I was just fed up. Found a good accountant, started learning a bit more about it, understood profit and loss statements and, balance sheets and basics things. And then started realizing, actually, if you don't stick your head in the sand with this kind of stuff, you can figure stuff out, and it typically doesn't end up as bad as it has been. So I went down that path, and then I read Mike's book, and I think I got maybe like 3 chapters in or something, and I was like, I want to do this. And so I just went and Googled like Profit First consultants or something, and Craig popped up, and Yeah, I just reached out to him and I just said, I just want to fast track this. Come and do it for me, and he did.
Yeah.
And we've been in bed ever since. Shout out to Craig, but
And Craig Minter is one of our awesome certified profit first professionals. He's been I think he just got his 5-year certification award at our Profit Con 2 weeks ago. So he has been doing this for quite some time. He is amazing. And I think that's a perfect example of how you knew that it was going to be good. You just wanted to shortcut it and make sure that you got the most out of it and worked with somebody who was
I knew
certified to do so.
I knew that I knew enough to know that I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
and so and I knew I needed to learn something. And this model seems simple enough for me to be able to, like an idiot like me, to be able to embrace it. And also, but yeah, being kind of, I want everything done yesterday. I wanted someone that could actually do the thing, because I knew I could fully well spend months and years trying to deploy this stuff and
Mm.
screw it up completely. So I just thought, I'm just going to spend the money and get someone to do it. And that was, in hindsight, a really good decision, because I, without question, would have screwed it up. And actually, and we'll circle back to this in a little bit, but like even some of the feedback which I hear about profit first on the negative side of things, and I think people just have a complete misunderstanding of it. But
Mm.
we'll come back to that in a bit. But so yeah, I knew I needed to. I knew I needed to learn more about finance for the business side of things, and it, truthfully, it was like a real. I won't say it was easy, because it was very different for me, but it was like once you get in that cadence, it just creates like a layer of transparency across the financial side of your business, which is so simple and just easy to manage, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
And I think that's one thing that I hear a lot is I think I've stuffed this up. Like I think I've done something wrong because it's really simple. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
when we stop overcomplicating it and we follow the system and we do as we should, it is a really simple system. But like you say, there's harder parts because we have to change the way that we look at our businesses and the way we think about our numbers. But once we can get through that, it is a really simple system that will absolutely change the business. So I'd like to then come back about those negatives that you hear people say about profit first. I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
find it super interesting.
So there's a lot of, I have a lot of colleagues and friends and things out there that are like in the business space, and a lot of them sort of hate on profit first. And their general feedback is, well, at the profit should not always be first in your business. There should be, times when you should be investing into, marketing or staff and all that kind of stuff. And they don't really understand the dynamic of what profit first is, because I think the name is actually quite misleading. And I really don't like the name. I think, like, I understand, like, from a selling books and a marketing point of view, it makes sense, but I don't think it's about that at all. I think, like, in essence, they should have named the book "How to Make Sure You've Got Funds Available in Every Department Within Your Business." But of course, that title wouldn't really sell many, would it? So, but I think there's just this general misconception of fundamentally what profit first is and how it actually looks within a business. And I think that's to the detriment of many people out there that are too ignorant to go and explore it firsthand. And I've introduced so many of these people to to their credit, like even my coach, like he had that, and I said, go and speak to my consultant, and I did, and they adopted it and they brought it on board. So people that are receptive and open to it, then they kind of get it. But a lot of people just don't. They just think, no, it's stupid, it's a crap system, blah, blah, blah. They don't really get it.
Yeah. And it's like anything, if we don't understand it fully, our opinion is not going to be based on all the information. And one of the things I talk about with clients is profit equals choice. When you have profit, then you have the choice to invest in your marketing, to grow your business, to give your staff pay increases, to take more wages yourself, to take holidays, to whatever you want it to do. And I think particularly in Australia, when we think about profit, we think of the big corporations making gazillions of dollars in profit and screwing the little person. So again, I think with that terminology around profit and just our general, all the big banks make all these big profits and the big airlines and all those sorts of things, and there is that negative connotation.
Like a dirty word almost.
Yeah, it's almost a dirty word, and it's like, and sometimes only just the other day I had somebody post on one of my posts about you shouldn't have profit at the expense of paying your team properly. And my response was, my team are paid very well because I am profitable. Like
Exactly.
the more profitable I can be, the more I can pay them.
Yeah.
But again, it's just that
It's ignorance.
preconceived idea that they already have, because they probably worked for somebody who seemed like they made a lot of money and paid him really poorly, and that absolutely could have been the case. But when you're doing profit first correctly, it's not about just making sure you are getting every last little cent out of the business. It's giving you that choice to run a business that can support other people, can pay its bills on time, can
Mm.
grow, can spend money on marketing, and just really knows
Yeah.
where the money's going and
I
what
mean,
it's.
truthfully, I see the profit side of it kind of as a serendipity.
Mm,
Like that's like the last thing that I really look at.
yeah,
Like I just want to know that I've got money sitting in OpEx and money sitting in my, contract, like team things where I can
account.
pay my staff, and there's buffers there and stuff like that, So like the profit side of things is, yeah, cool. I know it's there, and the vaults and all that kind of stuff that exists as well. But like, I think like at a base level, just knowing every month that you're going to have money available to pay bills and to
Mm,
pay the team and whatever it might be, like it's just it's just peace of mind.
mm. And I think what I find is people don't. I get a lot of feedback when they have their first BAS bill come around, and often I will get we've got money left over. Like, what? Something's wrong. The BAS is being done incorrectly, or like something is wrong here. And it's like, no, actually, it's right, because you've been allocating money aside for your
Yeah.
GST and making sure your PAYG is getting put away, and all of those things. And like you say, knowing that you can pay your team, you can pay your bills, you can pay all of those things without having to worry about making sure that you've got money coming in the door, because you've already got that covered. And I think that's where the simplicity comes down to it. A lot of people also say, oh, there's too many bank accounts, like particularly accountants and bookkeepers. That's ridiculous. That is going to be so much more time from a bookkeeping perspective. And if it is, it's because it's being done incorrectly. When I set it up for clients, it literally would add at best 30 seconds to bookkeeping. And I always say we're probably going to save you time because we're going to set it all up correctly
Yeah,
and
it saves so
make
much
it more
time. That's what I was
efficient.
saying. Like it's pretty
Yeah.
clear what.
And again, just being able to look and see how much money is in each of those bank accounts. I always joke with all of my clients that I was a financial planner before I started my bookkeeping business. I've had my bookkeeping business for 11 years, this one for almost coming up 6 in January. Like, I am a numbers person through and through, but I don't like doing calculations. And what I mean by that is I don't want to look at one bank account and then go, oh, I've got 10 grand there, but 3 is for bars and 2 is for this and blah, 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 blah. And then what have I got left? Like, I don't want to do those calculations. And that's one of the things that Profit First does, because we split it out into different bank accounts.
Mm,
I've got this for that purpose. Is
yeah,
it enough or not? It makes it so much easier. And I
yeah.
find that it allows us to look at our numbers much more consistently than what we have done in the past, because we didn't want to, they were confusing and we couldn't really tell where we were at. So we would just avoid them. We'll just keep doing this thing over here and we'll worry about that later, which ends in all sorts of disaster. So
It's also good as well knowing that you can, like, if you do have things coming up or you're working towards something, how you can sort of use the number, like the percentages and numbers to build that, like forecast that you can reverse engineer it.
it's
And
one of my favorite pieces that people miss. It's
mm,
like, yes, we can look at where we are now, but how much is that new team member going to cost you? How much do you
mm,
want to spend in marketing? How much do you, whatever it may be, and then run the numbers as if that has already happened. And then you
mm,
can see how those changes and what you then need to do. And it gives you a much clearer guideline, instead of going, oh, I need to go and get 5 new clients. It's like, oh, I need to get 3 clients at this amount of money by
yeah,
here, and then I can do those things. It
yeah.
makes that forward planning much more certain as
And
well.
I think that's one thing that even before Profit First, like that was a big turning moment for me in my business. Like I was working with a coach and they ran me through the whole, process around having a 3 year, or it might have even been more. I think it was 3 and then 1 year and then like quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily tasks kind of thing,
Yep.
breaking it down from the big picture. Because when you do that, and this is what Profit First does, I think really well, it makes you realize, I mean, testing what you said then, oh, that's all I've got to do to get to
Mm.
that. Like when you look at it, when you reverse engineer it and break it down into bite-sized chunks, like it just puts this polarizing lens over what you instantly deem as almost unattainable or unreachable as a macro goal. But when you
Mm.
break it down into bite-sized chunks, it's not that hard.
And again, that comes back to we can be less stressed. We can focus our energy on other things because we're not constantly thinking we can't achieve this goal because it's so huge. We know if we just do these things each day, then we're going to be able to hit that goal. And I know for me, my businesses at least, that was, and still when I do it, that is always surprising to me. It's like, oh, actually, I can do that.
Yeah.
I find, or I at least do sometimes default to that's too big, that's too hard type of mentality. Whereas when I just look at the numbers don't lie and it'll show me exactly what I need to do. And it's like, oh, actually.
Yeah. And then I think the question really becomes, is this big enough? Is this hard enough? Because once you understand and once you start achieving these things, and quite honestly, when you put that methodology into practice, in almost every instance, if you stick to the plan, you'll get there quicker than you expected. Like I can't think of a time I haven't.
And that is a perfect example of what I say to clients all the time. You might have a really big goal that feels huge and out of reach at the moment, but when we break it down, and even if that is so for a lot of clients I work with, they have a lot of debt when they come to me. And some of these clients, we're looking at a 2, 3, 4 year time frame to pay off the debt. Once they start working with Profit First, I have not had a client in almost 6 years who hasn't paid off the debt in a significantly less time frame than what was originally scheduled.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden we're like, oh, you can see it happening, you can see it reducing. So then instead of it being a negative thing about, oh God, I've got all this debt, it's like, oh, actually, like I'm knocking this off and getting this down, and it gets it done quicker.
Because the thing is with Profit First, and I suppose any sort of business coaching model that should really, like, yes, if you set a benchmark for what you should be paying off this debt, if it's percentage based and your income and revenue is going up, and like as a percentage, you've got more allocation to pay these things off. So it does get there faster because it's like a rising tide, you know? And so I think it's kind of refreshing when people are like, oh, okay, well, yeah, like we were expecting to spend this long to pay it off at the current model. But now that the business has grown 30% or whatever, we've got that extra revenue we've been able to allocate based off percentage into whatever it might be. And there's always, you always get there quicker.
Yeah. And I certainly haven't ever worked with anybody who has complained about paying off their debt sooner or being able to achieve their goals sooner. So,
yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So, one final question. And I know as we've had this conversation before, and you've always been a massive champion of Profit First, what is it that you would say to people who are on the fence or who are like, yeah, Profit First is not for me? What would be your words of wisdom to them?
I mean, it's the same I would say to anyone. If you don't try it, you'll never really know. But if you are going to try it, you've got to like give it the attention that it deserves, because it's not like a wave your magic wand and everything's fixed. Like, you still got to do the thing. It's not like it's like the old read a book and then hope it all happens, like it's not like that. Like it is a methodology. It is a change in habit. It's a change in action. It's something you've got to actually embrace and do. But I mean, I just can't see how you can go, especially if like as a tradie, in that space, and you don't know this stuff. And it's not your fault, by the way. Like
Absolutely.
I've been there. Like, you never taught that shit. So it's on you but it is your fault if you don't learn it, and this is as simple system as I've seen. I mean, alternatively, you can go and do like accounting and bookkeeping courses and that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, that was just, I was never going to do that, like it just didn't make any sense. And it's not to say that there aren't other financial models out there. I'm sure some of them are quite good, but like I think at a simplistic level, this is a very easy way to get started. And it's also worth mentioning as well, like at the starting point, and I think the advantage of having an implementer like you, Katie, is Like where you start is never where you end up. And very quickly you'll see things change with percentages and allocations and just even like accounts and like all this kind of stuff. Like there's a process to it, but you've got to get started somewhere.
Mm.
And I'd say if anyone is on the fence about it, get off the fence or just keep struggling. I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah. And that's great advice. And that's what I say to clients. I'm like, this is a way to manage your cash. It is not the way, it is not the only way. There are other ways to do it out there. But if you are not using one of those other ways, or your financial team, your accountant, or your bookkeeper aren't offering and suggesting and teaching you a different way, then maybe it might be time to have a look and
Well, I mean,
go.
if there's a listener out there who's had an accountant who does teach you and does like can you send me an intro? Like I've never had anyone come proactively to me and go, oh, let me teach you today about how to read a balance sheet. Like it's just never happened. I don't know, maybe there's unicorns out there, but yeah, I think realistically as business owners, you are the one that has to make that decision. And it's like anything, like if you want to learn something, you got to go and find the people, the resources, the tools, the programs, the training, the courses, like whatever it is that can teach you that thing. And otherwise it's never going to happen.
No.
It's not going to land
And
on your lap.
yeah, exactly. And I talk very much about building your financial team. You may not know what you need, but you need to start asking questions and listening to podcasts and doing the things.
Yeah.
And there are some amazing tax accountants out there. There certainly are. But for the most part, their specialty is managing your tax situation.
And a lot of them don't understand profit first.
And a lot of them don't understand business.
No,
They
that's
might
true.
have businesses themselves, but a lot of them aren't particularly entrepreneurial minded. Many of them are, but not all of them. So what they are doing is they're very good at doing your tax. That's what we want them to be. We want them to be exceptional tax accountants. But as you say, they're not very good at explaining things. They're not very good at helping you navigate your business. And that's okay. That's not their specialty. Find this person who is the specialty.
It's a very important point you raise, and a very slippery slope when you guys are like get to the point where you understand that you're like, so for context, for pretty much all of us give high fives to our accountants when they reduce how much tax we have to pay, except when you go to the bank to get a mortgage, right? And then you realize this accountant's been digging me for years because now I haven't been paying myself enough, right? And so you got, like what you're saying about getting the right team on board is really important, because your accountant has to know, and your whole team needs to know where, what are you looking at doing? Like, what are your goals? Are you looking at investing in property? Are you looking at investing in shares? Like, what is it? Like, what is the actual overall picture there? Because I'd say there's a pretty slim chance, although your accountant will probably tell you they are experts in all of it, they're probably not.
And that is, again, something I find here in Australia with small business owners. Our goal is pay as little tax as possible. Now, I certainly don't want to pay any more tax than I need, but I know that my goals are far more important than the amount of tax I pay. So again, that perfect example, I hear it all the time. It's like, we've gone to get a mortgage and the bank tells us we can't pay for them, we can't service the mortgage because our tax returns tell them that we've been earning $50,000 a year or whatever it may be. Yeah. So again, having those goals, knowing what you're going to do 1 year, 3 year, 5 years out, it doesn't have to be set in stone, but we have to have an idea. And then again, having that. So when I work with clients, I always insist that my clients do an intro email to their accountant as well. So then I get authorization from my client to share their goals with the accountant, because often they're like, oh, I have kind of, but not really. And it's like, okay, cool. They want to buy an investment property, or they want to do this. They're going to have to borrow. So what do we need them to be earning, and how are you going to do that so that we're all on the same page? Because so often I have had people come to me go, oh, I've got this deposit, but now I don't have the income to support it. And now the banks are telling us we need 2 years worth of income, and then they just, they miss the boat type of thing. So super, super important about your financial team. And I even include, your tax accountant, if you have a bookkeeper, your profit first coach, if you have, your mortgage broker, if you have a financial planner, if you are working with any, even even clients who are working with agencies like yourself, it's like, cool, well, what's the goal there? Like, what are we looking at from an income perspective there or leads perspective? So then we can, again, reverse engineer that and then go, okay, is that going to match this? They might come to you and say, oh, we need X amount of leads, but that might not give them what they need, or it might give them way more than they need. And so just being able to have those conversations around the goals of the business, and then each specialist doing their part to help the clients reach their goals, is something that I harp on about all the time. And I have some amazing accountants who will do that, and I have some who are not interested in that, and that's perfectly okay. And I just say to my clients, maybe it's time for a new accountant or a new bookkeeper or a new mortgage broker or whatever.
I know, and that's a big, and that can be a daunting step. It's like, well, I've been using this accountant for 20 years. It's like, yeah, that's right. I'm not going to get broke. Like, like sometimes you got to make these harsh decisions, and you got to do things that are going to move the needle.
And I think coming back to your point earlier, where you're like, you have to, it's your responsibility to take the steps to learn about it. And one thing I do with my clients is go and ask your tax accountant these questions. And they're either going to realize that you're interested in those sorts of things, and they'll open up the conversation, and you'll realize there's another side of your tax accountant that you weren't aware of, or won't answer them, or they won't give you very good answers, and then you're like, okay, time to move on.
Shake out the dead wood.
Yeah. And so then again, it's like, okay, when you go find a new one, ask these questions, tell them that this is what you want to do, and you'll very soon figure out whether it's a good match or not. And again, it's with any financial part of your financial team. It's so important. Particularly this year, I've seen a huge increase in clients in both my coaching and the bookkeeping business who have gotten into situations from a financial perspective that could have been avoided had it not been for some really
bad advice.
Yeah. I see it every year, but this year especially. And again, they don't know what they don't know. But I find if you've kind of got an inkling, put your hand up, reach out to somebody and just get those steps rolling, because
again, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, we're talking on the finance side of things, but you could say that in any aspect of life. There's the what is it? The most expensive advice is free. Like there's so many people out there that will give advice, and this is why I say to our clients and our listeners, like it's important to know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. Like you don't need to know a lot about everything, but if you understand the fundamentals, and even when clients come on board with us, like we're so methodical with numbers, like anal with numbers, and they're all freaked out about it because they're all tradies and they don't get it. But like after a while, they understand it because the numbers help us really position bottlenecks and dictate what part of their process
working
when they come on board needs to evolve or needs work. And so it just cuts through all the bullshit. Otherwise you're constantly ending up like making decisions based on emotion as opposed to data.
And this is one thing I say all the time. When you are looking at the data, as long as the data is correct, so we have to get that part right. I mean, from my perspective, it's making sure the bookkeeping is being done correctly. But once we can look at that data, it helps make every single decision in your business easier, whether it's a financial decision, whether it's profit first, whether it's tax, whatever it may be, whether it's investing in a marketing agency. When you know your numbers, and again, I always say to clients, you don't have to spend hours of time every week at this. Like from a profit first perspective, 15 minutes a week is more than enough than you need. And then coming back to your point, it's like, when you know those numbers from a marketing perspective, you know whether you can see where those bottlenecks are. You don't have to guess anymore. And I know for my businesses, that's been one of the biggest relief, that I don't have to leave it to my own devices to just guess or put myself down a path because that feels a little bit better. Like the numbers are there.
And I think the advantage as well of like the profit first system is the cadence of it, like just going in every week and doing your allocations. It gets you in front of your accounts and it gets you into your bank account. And whereas it's so often without that system that you might just, I'll let it go for another week or whatever it might be, right? Or month, whatever. But the beauty of the doing these things regularly, like at a cadence which is not quarterly or annually or whatever, is you can make adjustments.
Yeah.
And when you see things trending in the wrong direction, if it's a week or two, you can reel it back in. Whereas if it's a month or two or three or four or five or 6 or 12 months, like you can't reel it in, it's gone.
Mm. And I always talk about it allows you to be proactive. Because you're having that quick check-in every week, you can see that happening and then you can make a correction, rather than if we go back to like doing our end of financial year tax. Again, in Australia, we are so used to financial year ends 30 June, and we won't do our tax for, if you've got a company, you
Yeah.
might not be doing it till May. And then you're looking at it and then going, oh, whoops, we made these bad financial decisions here.
Yeah.
And oh, look, we've already 3/4 of the way through the next year. And it makes it really hard to make those changes quickly. So by having profit first in your business, you're able to see so much sooner.
Yeah.
And again, it just makes things so much easier. So
Having the money available there for tax all the time, regardless, is just such a relief because you'd never have to worry about it.
yeah.
And not, I remember before it, I was like every quarter would come around, and I'd be sweating on it, I'd be like, I do owe the money. Whereas since profit first, you don't have to worry about it ever.
And then what has that done for you as a business owner by not worrying about that? Then I'm assuming that's freed up time and energy for you to
Yeah, it enables me to stress on other things.
other things. Yeah. So instead of stressing on all of these things, you can stress on a little bit less. But we can reduce, at least we can reduce and take that one out.
I mean, that's a big one though, because there's
Yeah.
like not having to worry about the finance side of the business, or if there's money available for certain things, or even just being able to at the click of your fingers check if there is money available within the various departments of whatever it needs, whatever you might be looking at acquiring or buying or whatever. Then like it's just good to know if it's there, and like especially tax, like that whole tax conversation. It's so good just opening the accounts and seeing there's just money in there, so you're not going to get, you're not going to come unstuck come next quarter or for the next year, or maybe even I'll pay next year's up front, like
And
it just gives you options.
yeah. And I think that's a good point as well. Like coming back to that, profit gives you choice and profit gives you options, and it allows you to focus on what you need to focus on the business. So for my businesses, there was a period of time where my dad was quite sick and he passed away, then my mum was quite sick and then he passed away. So over the course of 2 years. And had I not had profit first in my businesses at that time, there is no way I could have still had them running. There is no way. I hired team members during that time because I knew what my numbers were. I worked out about 40% less time in my business over that 2 years because I was taking them to hospitals and so on and so forth. And without that, there's no way those businesses would have survived, which would have meant that it would have been a bigger financial stress on our family, because obviously my income also goes towards the family. And I think for the tax, that's always a big one, that we don't want to get the ATO offside. We want to just make sure that they're happy, because if they're happy, then we're miles ahead of most other businesses. And
I mean, for the better part, like, I mean, I know most, I mean, you would know way better than me, but like a lot of businesses, trade businesses especially, have a pretty bad relationship with with the ATO. The ATO is actually quite reasonable.
they are very reasonable.
When it comes to like I think for the better part, they tend to understand that no one knows, like the average business owner doesn't know anything about this sort of stuff. And when people trip up, I mean, I don't know if they offer a huge amount of advice, but they're pretty reasonable with like paying back those, the money and things like that. I think with the system in place, like Profit First, it does make it quite easy. And at the same time, it educates you as to not how to fall back into that trap again. And same with credit card debts and things like that, like it just, you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore once you've got this system deployed and operating properly.
And a good point there with the ATO, they are really reasonable if we keep them up to date with what's happening and what they're doing at the moment. They need to recoup some funds that they handed out over the last few years. So now if you ring for a payment plan, then they want to know, can you afford it? So you need to supply them with some numbers. And clients who have had profit first in their business and have needed to do that, are able to give them those numbers and then get that approval for that payment plan much quicker and much less stressful than those who haven't. And because, as you say, they are really reasonable if we keep them up to date and give them the information they need. And we want to tick that off and never have to do that again. And Profit First will certainly help you with that one.
I'm curious, in your opinion, is there a point within a business where you think it's the best time to embrace Profit First?
Yes. Now, so wherever
so
you are,
like if you're a startup or if you're a one man, like
yes.
what
So
stage?
if you're starting up right from the beginning, because you're going to get into those good habits, you go and Profit First is a system that is going to help you identify what's working and what's not working in your business. So by doing it when you start up, it will help you see very quickly whether you're charging enough, whether whether you're quoting correctly, and all of those sorts of things. Because I always say that the bank accounts, if there's not enough money in a particular bank account, that's a red flag for you that something's not working in the business. So it could be your pricing, it could be because you're doing the job and you're not invoicing for weeks. People still do that consistently. I don't understand how, but not quoting, but not really putting together a really comprehensive quote and actually knowing what they're quoting and what they're costing. So getting into those habits from the beginning, it will very quickly show you whether you're doing those things right. And we do sort of have a little bit of the attitude of, I'm just starting out. I've just got to take whatever job I can. I've got to just like go in at a lower price. And I disagree with that. I disagree because I'm like, yeah, you have to get the work, but you have to do it in a way that you're still going to be able to pay your ATO, you're still going to be able to pay GST, you're going to be able to do all those things, because all you're doing is putting that off for a later date. And then you're going to end the financial year, not going to do your tax return until May, then you're going to have a debt, and then you're going to have to catch up, and then you spend the next, and this is why when people talk about, the first 3 to 5 years, you won't make a profit. Businesses who start Profit First at the beginning do. And it's just because they have a system in place that allows them to see if they're doing those things correctly. Are they pricing correctly? Are they, time on the job? They might quote 5 hours and they're there for 10. And that's not a huge deal if it's just you for the most part. But once you have team, all of those things come into play. So when they start, and it's interesting, I have a noticeable increase in people who are about to start businesses in the next, like now to 3 months time, reach out and say, hey, my mate heard you on your podcast or listen to my podcast or whatever, and I'm going to start soon. What can I do now? And so that is so refreshing. That is super exciting.
I think from my experience, especially, if I didn't go through the struggles I did, I probably wouldn't have gone looking for a solution, and I wonder if, for a lot of the people out there, until they actually feel that pain, and then they have to need to go back and fix it, like it's a hard thing to sell people on. I mean, unless they've sort of had business experience and they've been through it before, like I feel like, because I have this conversation with people all the time, because I promote the shit out of Profit First. I love it. But like some people, I think that haven't quite had, they haven't been hurt enough
to go through it.
They haven't been knocked around the park enough for them to realize, man, I actually really do need something like this to pull me out of the weeds.
And those that have reached out who are starting businesses sooner, every single one of them has said, like, that their mate or somebody has said, you've got to do this from the beginning because you don't want to go through what I went through. So it's come from someone else's
pain.
Yeah, somebody else's pain. And if we can avoid pain, that's great. But definitely there are plenty of people out there who are going to do it. And then until the pain gets so bad, then that's when they reach out. So yeah, if they can do it from the start, that's best. But today is always a good time as well.
I guess it's one of those things, when you look at the journey of someone that's starting a business, there's number of things they think they need to do in order, and like probably in my instance especially, like understanding financial models was not high on my hit list when I got started. It was like, how do you make the phone ring, and how do I make enough money to buy a new car and spend ridiculously amount of money on something I shouldn't, anyway, I guess if that is you out there and you're like, you are relatively new into business and you think you're doing things right, you're probably not. So just get on the phone to Katie and sort your shit out, because it will make a big difference.
And on that note, thank you, Matt. Great to have you on here. As I said, your podcast has always been one that many of my clients listen to, and I recommend they listen to it as well. Almost 400 episodes, so congratulations on that again. And yeah, we'll catch up again sometime, I am sure.
Absolutely.
Cool.